How to create your one-point perspective skyscrapers. Put your name and teacher code on the back. For the supplies you need, be sure to borrow a large eraser if you don't have one. Here are some tips for getting nice straight lines with your ruler. First of all, before you draw any lines, slow down and look and see if your line is going to end up where you want. Draw very lightly by not pushing hard with your pencil. Be sure that your fingers are slightly spread out, because if they're squashed together, your ruler's just going to wobble around. And then finally, it's really helpful to use the edges of your paper by lining up your ruler with the edge to draw very straight lines, whether they are horizontal or vertical. It's really helpful to check and see that your ruler's lined up with the bottom of your paper to help you draw straight lines. To begin, you'll add your vanishing point about in the middle of your paper, and then you'll add 2 points to your corners. This is where you'll know where to draw your building lines from. Be sure to do this for every single corner. When you're doing a perspective drawing, it is good to keep in mind that your lines should be horizontal, vertical, or going to the vanishing point that you created. If they are not any of these lines, then you will need to erase and fix those lines so that they are horizontal, vertical, or going to the vanishing point. To begin your first building, you're going to find your vanishing point and the point that you put in the corner at the bottom of your paper, and you're going to check, slow down and check, make sure that those 2 points are lined up, and you're going to lightly draw a line from each corner dot and the vanishing point, very, very lightly. Once you have your kind of triangle shape, you're going to line your ruler up with the edge of your paper to create a horizontal line that will make the top of your building. Then go ahead and erase the line that is in between the top of your building and your vanishing point. Do not erase your vanishing point because you need it for the rest of your drawing. Next, I'm going to figure out where I would like my first set of windows to start. So I'm going to line up my ruler with the edge of my paper and then create 2 small lines where my windows will be. And I want to try and make them as even as possible. So take your time, make adjustments as you need to for the top part of your window, the first line of your window. Then you'll turn your ruler to line up with your vanishing point and the line that you created for your window. And you're going to draw a line all the way down. And then you will slightly turn your ruler, line it up with the vanishing point and the line you made for your window. So now we're creating the other side of our window. Carefully draw downward. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side, lining up with your vanishing point and the line that you created for your window. Now we will divide up our windows going down the front of the building. So you need to draw some horizontal lines. And I'm using the edge of my paper again and just drawing a line in the space that I created for my window on each side. Next, I'm going to create the kind of gap that is between my windows. So this is just going to be a small space, and we will erase the extra lines in a moment. Now I'm going to slide my ruler down a little bit farther. I want it to be just a little bit bigger than the first window, because as we get closer to the bottom, it should gradually get larger. You're adding horizontal lines once again. And the same thing, the gap between the windows is also going to get slightly larger as it goes to the bottom of the building. And you're going to repeat this process as you get all the way down to the bottom of your building. And depending on how tall you made yours, you may have more or less windows than I did. And if you need to, you can always pause for a second and erase the lines that you no longer need. Next, you'll rotate your paper and you're going to create the same triangle shape like you did for your first building. Maybe this one you want to be taller than your first building, or maybe you want it shorter. You get to decide, but you do the same thing where you create a triangle and then you create a horizontal line that makes the top of your building. Because the space is a little smaller, I'm just making little dots where I would like my windows to be, the tops of my windows. So I'm adding the lines for the tops of my windows in my small space there. Now I'm going to divide my building into sections by adding a couple horizontal lines. If you take a look at the reference picture to the left, you'll be able to see what I'm creating. And as yours may be different than mine, so if you need to add more or less of these dividing lines, you can, or maybe you don't want these dividing lines, and that's okay too. Next, you will find your vanishing point and you'll line it up with that window line, and you're just going to draw in the space that you created for your windows because you're dividing up the sections of your building now. Create those short lines in between every divided space. You're going to do the same thing for the other side of the window. Find your vanishing point, line it up with that top window line, and create your vertical lines. Then, if you need to, you can make corrections when you add the bottoms of the windows. Just erase and the tops, and just make any small adjustments as you need to. You may have drawn your lines a little bit too long in some spots, which is no big deal. And if you have more windows or less windows, that is okay. Just make sure you're using your vanishing point to line up that window line all the way down to the bottom. When I add my extra line detail here to my divider spaces that I made on my building, kind of imagine that your ruler is hinged to your vanishing point. So it's stuck right there in your vanishing point, and you're just gradually turning your ruler, making sure that it is lined up with your vanishing point every single time that you make a new line. So like I said, slow down and look, make sure that it's lined up in the correct space before you add your line. For the last two buildings, I have sped up the video, so don't hesitate to pause it at any point if you need. This one I'm making actually is maybe the slightly trickiest one because there are 3 towers. If you're up for the challenge, try it out. And then finally, the last one is just essentially the same or similar steps to the other ones that you saw previous. You are welcome to modify the buildings to your liking and skill level. So if you want to do fancy towers on every single one, you're welcome to do that. Or if you would prefer to just stick with some basic windows and lines, that's okay too.